Welcome to This Explainer. Okay, today we are going to completely shatter the illusion that great strategy is just about setting massive, impossible goals. If you've ever felt totally overwhelmed by leadership jargon or vague corporate aspirations, well, you are in exactly the right place. We're breaking down a brilliant concept from Richard Rumelt's work that fundamentally redefines what it actually means to lead.
So we constantly hear that to succeed, leaders need to gaze up into the clouds and cast this wild blue sky vision. You know the drill, right? Stuff like, we're going to be the global leader, or we will revolutionize the industry. But the reality? That approach usually just results in a messy dog's dinner of vague aspirations. It creates this long laundry list of things everyone would like to see happen, but it provides absolutely no coherent approach to actually getting there. Ultimately, it's just wishful thinking disguised as strategy.
Let's really dive into this. A true strategic objective isn't a distant dream. It is what we call proximate. And by proximate, we mean it's a feasible, solvable target that creates immediate momentum. It's a target that your organization can reasonably be expected to hit, or even completely overwhelm. Instead of pointing to some blue sky fantasy where literally no one knows how to get there, a proximate objective builds a solid, concrete bridge between your current challenge and your immediate actions.
Section 1. The moon landing strategy.
To see this in action, let's look at JFK's 1961 moonshot. It's often wrongly cited as the ultimate impossible dream, but actually, it was a highly calculated, deliberately chosen proximate objective. Here's the backstory. JFK wanted to beat the Soviets, who had a massive early lead with heavy-lift rockets. That meant they were almost guaranteed to win any near-term space spectaculars. But a brilliant rocket scientist named Wernher von Braun pointed out to the Kennedy administration that shifting the race all the way to the moon changed the game entirely. Why? Because going to the moon required a massive leap in rocket power that neither nation possessed yet.
Notice this massive 10x performance jump. Now, this specific requirement played directly to America's larger economic and industrial resource base. It wasn't just a blind leap of faith. The engineers already knew the basics of how to design rockets. They just needed to scale them up massively. Kennedy chose the moon because it gave the United States a feasible problem to solve and a massive strategic advantage, completely neutralizing the Soviets' temporary lead.
Section 2. Resolving NASA's ambiguity. But here's the catch. Even with that moonshot clearly defined from the top, achieving it meant resolving some incredibly paralyzing ambiguities on the ground. Specifically, this played out at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory for the unmanned Surveyor mission, which had to land on the moon before any humans could. The engineers at JPL were totally stuck. They couldn't design a landing vehicle because they were paralyzed by one massive question. What was the lunar surface actually like? I mean, scientists had all these competing theories. Would the craft sink into an ocean of soft, powdery dust? Would it get speared by needle-sharp crystals, or crash into a chaotic jumble of giant boulders? Because of all this ambiguity, no engineer could defend their spacecraft design against someone else's sci-fi horror story of what the moon might do to it. Enter a brilliant researcher named Phyllis Buwalda. She stepped in and absorbed all of that paralyzing ambiguity. She studied all the theories and basically said, enough is enough, establishing a practical, definitive model of the lunar surface for the engineering team to actually use. Her specification declared the moon was hard and grainy, with slopes less than 15 degrees and boulders no larger than 2 feet across. Essentially, she said it looked a lot like the southwestern American desert. By putting her foot down, her clear, concrete specifications handed those engineers a problem they could actually solve. They could finally stop arguing about space dust and crystals and just start building. That specification saved the mission. Surveyor successfully landed, and it paved the exact path for the Apollo astronauts just a few years later. Section 3. The hierarchy of skills. So how do you know which proximate objective you should tackle first in your own work? Well, it completely depends on your organization's accumulated skills. What's proximate and feasible for one group might be a distant, impossible fantasy for another. A veteran helicopter pilot named PJ explained this beautifully through the mechanics of flying. He pointed out that if a helicopter engine fails, you have about 1 second to coordinate the pedals in the collective to keep from dropping right out of the sky. That basic coordination has to be completely automatic. You can't even think about landing on a pitching ship at sea or flying in combat until the fundamental act of flying the machine is second nature. You absolutely must climb this hierarchy of skills.
Organizations are exactly the same way. You cannot skip rungs on the ladder of complexity. You've got to master the basics of flying your business before you can tackle complex global expansions or highly advanced initiatives. A startup needs to master the basic coordination of marketing, engineering, and sales before it worries about opening offices in Europe, right?
The proximate objective has to match the rung of the ladder you are currently standing on.
Section 4. The Regional Business School.
Let's see how this builds in a real-world scenario. Take a regional business school that desperately wanted to boost its prestige and ranking. Like a lot of organizations, their initial strategic plan was a cluttered dog's dinner of initiatives. A bit of global studies, a dash of sustainability, some entrepreneurship. It was a classic case of spreading resources way too thin to achieve a breakthrough in anything. But then, they pivoted. They realized their students mostly went to local accounting and service firms, so they focused all their energy into one single feasible proximate target, getting their students hired by 10 specific, top-tier target firms that weren't currently recruiting there. They formed faculty committees to study exactly what those firms needed and tailored their entire program to match. By focusing on one solvable problem, they created a massive cascade of positive results. Section 5. Leaders absorb complexity. And this brings us to the core truth about leadership and strategy. We really need to shift away from the modern idea of the leader as a visionary cheerleader and get back to the leader as an actual problem solver. Great leaders don't just point to a distant horizon and tell everyone to work harder. They act as a shield. They absorb the overwhelming complexity and ambiguity of the world, just like Phil Spawalda did with the lunar surface, to give their teams a clear, actionable path forward. They define the challenge, and they hand the organization a problem it can actually solve today. So, I'm going to leave you with this final, provocative thought to apply to your own strategy, whether you're running a massive corporation, a small team, or just managing your own career. Look at your current goals. Are they just wishful thinking? And more importantly, what ambiguity are you absorbing for your team today?